From the Democrats, we now turn to another candidate in the 2008 field, Matt Gonzalez, running on Ralph Nader's ticket as a vice presidential candidate, San Francisco-based attorney, former president of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. In 2003, he ran for mayor of San Francisco on the Green Party ticket, but lost in a close race to Democrat Gavin Newsom. Matt Gonzalez joins me here in Palo Alto at Stanford University. Welcome to Democracy Now!
Thanks for having me.
Well, as we play clips of the debate last night, let's start at the beginning with this whole controversy about what Senator Barack Obama said about people who are in desperate conditions, people who are economically strapped, turning to guns and religion.
Well, Amy, I think it's a tempest in a teapot. I don't think that you can take this one or two sentence remark that Senator Obama made and really draw all kinds of conclusions by it. I think anybody that's in the political arena, often as you're speaking, you engage in shortcuts as you're trying to make a point. And my understanding of the way the polls have played out there, the comment isn't that significant.
And these other issues that were raised for the first 45 minutes of this debate, wearing a lapel pin, friends with someone who was in the Weather Underground in the 1960s?
Well, I think that that's disturbing. I think the real question is the responsibility of the media not to essentially present these in a way that suggests that there's something that Senator Obama has to explain about them. And that's the sense that I have is what occurred last night.
Their positions on war.
Well, I think the debate actually, and the problem with the debate is that they're not getting clear answers on these issues. The candidates are using certain catchphrases. They're saying no permanent bases, and we're going to start a withdrawal, or we're going to get combat troops out. But they're not committing to having troops out of the region in the first 4 years of their presidency. They have left it very open. I think Senator Obama, in an interview with you, indicated that he would leave the private army that's there, over 100,000. And I think there are policy groups, Democratic policy groups, that have made it clear that it would require tens of thousands of soldiers in Iraq to carry out Senator Obama's mandate, which is to be able to strike at al-Qaeda and do counterterrorism there.
What is your proposal?
Well, I think Nader has been very committed to getting our troops out. He's saying that the resistance is going to continue as long as there's an American presence there, and we have to start engaging in a foreign policy that doesn't believe that you're going to accomplish everything through aggression. I think it's very clear that the United States has a long history of engaging in foreign policy for our quote-unquote interests, which are unfortunately too often corporate interests.
I wanted to turn to the candidates' positions on the economy. This is a clip from last night's debate in Pennsylvania.
We have seen wages and incomes flat or declining at a time when costs have gone up. And one of the things that we've learned from George Bush's economic policies, which John McCain now wants to follow, is that pain trickles up. And so partly because people have been strapped and have had a tough time making ends meet, we're now seeing a deteriorating housing market. That's also as a consequence of the lack of oversight and regulation of these banks and financial institutions that gave loans that they shouldn't have. And part of it has to do with the fact that you had $185 million by mortgage lenders spent on lobbyists and special interests who are writing these laws. So the rules in Washington, the tax code has been written on behalf of the well-connected. Our trade laws have, the same thing has happened. And part of how we're going to be able to deliver on middle-class tax relief is to change how business is done in Washington, and that's been a central focus of our campaign.
Senator Clinton also touted her economic plan.
I think we have to invest in our infrastructure. That also will get the economy moving again. And I believe we could put about 3 million people to work in good union jobs where people get a good wage with a good set of benefits that can support a middle-class family with a rising standard of living. I want to see us actually tackle the housing crisis, something I've been talking about for over a year. If I had been president a year ago, I believe we would have begun to avoid some of the worst of the mortgage and credit crisis, because we would have started much earlier than we have. In fact, I don't think we've really done very much at all yet in dealing with a way of freezing home foreclosures, of freezing interest rates, getting money into communities to be able to withstand the problems that are caused by foreclosures.
Independent vice presidential candidate Matt Gonzalez, your response to their economic proposals?
Well, I don't think you can really talk about the economy without talking about the tremendous amount of resources we're putting into the war. A full 55, maybe as much as 60% of our tax dollars are going to this war, to paying debt on the war, to going into the military. Both the Republican and Democratic candidates in this field want to increase military spending. And so for all of the rhetoric about trying to deal with, the common person, the war has to be addressed. The other thing I would say is that when the Democrats took Congress, when Pelosi became the Speaker, they moved forward on raising the minimum wage. But one thing that they didn't do is address an issue that these candidates are raising now, which is as cost of living shifts, that minimum wage should be going up without having to go back and have a fight in Congress. When we passed a minimum wage in San Francisco, we did that. And again, the question mark is how effective is our opposition party in Congress when they have a majority, they don't take advantage of it and institute something that can work on its own in the future.
Do you and Ralph Nader have a strategy to win?
I do. I certainly do. And in talking to Ralph, I think he's very heartened by some of the polls that are out there. The real question is whether or not we're going to be allowed into the debates. When I ran for mayor, I started in San Francisco, I started with support of maybe 3–4%. Because I was allowed into debates, that eventually became 47%. Nader has poll numbers in Michigan at 10%. Other national polls have put him at 5–6%. I think that put us in the debates and let's see how it goes. And I think as the American people see there is an alternative, those numbers will get stronger.
And the argument, of course, that this is a pivotal year, 2008, in changing the direction of this country. What impact do you think your race will have?
Well, I think one thing that's important to keep in mind is that if you don't change how elections are happening, you're never going to have the fundamental change that you need to address a host of issues. So if we don't run, there's no problem that needs to be fixed, and we keep on this very narrow political spectrum. If we run, we raise the question, which is, what are the other political parties doing to reform elections, and why aren't they addressing issues that we're addressing, like single-payer health care or issues related to a full withdrawal from the war in Iraq, questions like that.
If you had won in 2003 against Gavin Newsom,